Just a reminder for anyone that is speaking tonight, please push the microphone button on the desk just so that we make sure we pick you up on the recording. And okay, so I'm calling the meeting to order. We will now do our opening prayer and the land acknowledgement. So if you will join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Alton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations in the Métis,
from the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you, Margaret. Good? Yeah, okay, perfect. Moving along to item 1.2 is the approval of the agenda. Everybody would have received a copy of the agenda in their package for this evening's meeting. Was there any additions, deletions to the agenda? Great, okay, seeing none, could I get someone to move the approval of the agenda?
Rick will move it.
Moved by Rick. Could I get a seconder? Thank you, Trish. Okay, on to declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? Nope, seeing none. Moving right along to our presentation. So this evening we do have a presentation on mental health literacy, and I welcome Chanel Bernier to present to thank you so much for being here. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Chanel Bernier. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Manager of Social Work and also the Mental Health Lead. So today, actually, if we can go to the next slide, Margaret, wanted to talk to you a little bit about the mandatory mental health modules for grades 7, 8, and 10 students. In January of this year, the Ministry of Education introduced some mandatory mental health literacy lessons for grades 7 and 8 students, followed in September of this year by some mandatory mental health lessons for our grade 10 students. Working with School Mental Health Ontario, educators here at HCDSB have been delivering this important learning in our schools. The modules really enhance the learning in terms of mental health literacy and help equip our students with culturally responsive, evidence-based knowledge, skills, and strategies to support their mental health. And the focus of the lessons is more about well-being rather than a focus on mental illness and how to manage illness. So we'll go on to the next slide, which is a video, which will introduce us to what's covered in grades 7 and 8.
They are a series of 3 modules per grade from the Ministry. Hello there. Welcome to our guide to the mental health literacy modules for grades 7 and 8.
So what are these mental health literacy modules?
They are a series of 3 modules per grade from the Ministry of Education, delivered by educators to support the existing mental health literacy expectations within Strand D of the Health and Physical Education curriculum.
The first grade 7 module is mental health, mental illness, and the relationship between them.
The second grade 7 module is understanding signs of a mental health problem and how to seek support.
The third grade 7 module is mental health, substance use, and the relationship between them.
The first grade 8 module is mental health and stigma.
The second grade 8 module is supporting our mental health, managing stress.
The third and final grade 8 module is how to help a friend, seeking support for others while caring for ourselves. There are many important reasons to prioritize mental health learning. Students want to learn more about mental health at school. This type of learning helps students develop skills that support positive mental health. Mental health learning supports learning in all other areas, and it inspires students to reach out for support when they need help with their mental health.
These modules build on your work. They're not new learning. They offer ways to enhance the delivery of the existing curriculum and focus on mental health literacy.
Since educators already support student well-being in many ways every day, they are well positioned to guide these mental health literacy modules for grades 7 and 8.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks for everything you do.
In grade 7 and 8, they are 40 minutes. Let me try again. So in the grade 7 and 8 curriculum, there are 40-minute modules which are embedded within the phys ed curriculum. And educators lead students through a minds-on activity, an action task, and then a consolidation of the learning. And so the next slides, thank you, Margaret, we'll look at what is covered in each of the grades. So grade 7 was mental health, mental illness, and the relationship between them. So that's looking at the positive concepts around mental health and ways that we can promote mental health. The second module in grade 7 is understanding the signs of a mental health problem and how to seek support. So students learn how to monitor their own mental health and when and where to seek support. The third grade 7 module looks at the relationship between mental health and substance use. In grade 8, the modules look at mental health and stigma, how students can learn to manage stress and what is healthy stress versus when it becomes a problem, and how to help a friend. So those are important lessons that we're teaching in our elementary years. And then the next slide will do an overview of what is covered in the grade 10 careers course. We won't watch the whole video, just about the first couple minutes.
Your guide to the mental health literacy modules for career studies.
What are the mental health literacy modules for career studies?
There are 2 modules from the Ministry of Education that will be delivered by educators through in-person or online learning to support mental health literacy expectations within the 2024 Career Studies course.
Module 10.1 is Strategies for Managing Stress and Navigating Balance. This module supports student learning on school-work-life balance by identifying sources of stress and building a toolkit of helpful strategies students can embed into their daily routines, both now and in the future, to help navigate sources of stress.
Module 10.2 is Knowing when, where, and how to seek support. This module helps students recognize signs that could indicate stress is becoming problematic and know where and how to seek support should they need it.
Why teach mental health literacy? Learning about mental health is important. It helps students develop skills that support positive mental health. It supports learning in all other areas. It helps respond to student requests to learn about mental health at school. And it encourages students to reach out for support when they need help with their mental health.
What's the format of these modules? Each teacher-led 60-minute module follows a familiar 3-part lesson format. It includes Minds On, a quick activity to spark students' thinking, action tasks, the core learning of the module with user-friendly tools such as videos and slide decks, along with discussion guides and teacher prompts to help with delivery. Consolidation, thoughtful questions that provide opportunities for students to reflect and share. Also included are supportive transition activities that introduce and conclude the learning in a positive way to help students transition safely to the next part of their day.
Thank you, Margaret. So as you can see, they follow the same format as the grade 7 and 8 lessons, so it's really easy and familiar for students, and also builds on what students would have learned in grade 7 and 8. So the next slide, again, is just a high-level overview of what is covered in those grade 10 lessons, and it's strategies for managing stress and also knowing when and how to seek support. We hear a lot from students that this is a question that they have, how to seek support for themselves and their friends. So we go to the next slide. This is where we have the educator information about considerations for students with special education needs. All of our students benefit from learning about mental health, but it's even more important for students with special education needs. Students with special education needs have many strengths and supports, but may also experience risk factors that can negatively impact their mental health. School Mental Health Ontario notes that some students may experience ableism, marginalization, bullying, a lack of stable friendships, difficulty with daily living skills, less access to recreational or social opportunities, and/or academic problems. Some students may also experience intersection between their special education needs and specific mental health problems. By introducing developmentally appropriate ways to learn about mental health, educators and support staff can support the overall mental health and well-being of students with special needs. The educator guides for the mental health literacy modules for grade 7, 8, and 10 include suggestions for ways to accommodate the lessons so that they can be adapted to meet a variety of student needs. This includes suggestions around using closed captioning, video transcripts, adjusting playback speed on videos, incorporating student voice for those using augmentative and alternative communication, and the use of alternative and supportive tools to consolidate learning. School Mental Health Ontario also has a range of info sheets, posters, graphics, worksheets, and other resources to help educators ensure that all students benefit from learning about mental health. So moving to the next slide, just wanted to draw your attention to what's hopefully a familiar site, but if not, this is School Mental Health Ontario, and they're our implementation partner for mental health learning for students. There is a section of the website that is dedicated to parents and caregivers, so highly recommend that you access that from their main landing page. One of the examples of the info sheets that they have is noticing mental health concerns for your child and different ways to support. And there's also a student section on the website as well, so definitely let your children know about that page. That concludes, unless there's any questions from anyone.
Great, thank you so much. I have a couple questions, but does anybody have any questions before I dive in? That last piece, the caregiver, the resources for caregivers, how is that currently being shared with families and parents and guardians in our system?
We have a number of the SMHO, School Mental Health Ontario information on the OLS, on our OLS internally, and we're looking at ways that we can develop a newsletter that we can share externally as well. More of it, that's our goal for this year as part of our action plan. And School Mental Health Ontario is also soon releasing, early in the new year, a parent engagement toolkit, which is another set of resources where we can look at how we're sharing information with the school communities.
That's great to hear. I think, there's some of us that are familiar with School Mental Health Ontario. I've had the privilege of working with them on some other projects, but I mean, those are such important, valuable resources. And, I think it would be really great to find a tangible way. I just don't know that parents would stumble upon that. I don't even know that parents would start to look for that. So I do think if we can play a role in getting that message, that information out to them somehow, it will be great.
Chair, thank you. We do also have our website has a landing page with School Mental Health Ontario resources that we have encouraged in the past, but to your point, I think broadly sharing and having an awareness for schools to connect with parents around the resources in times where everyone is well and in times where there might be a need is part of our plan to ensure that everyone's aware of these resources for sure. But there is on our website, there is a landing page for parents as well.
Is it something that could be in school? Like, is that landing page shared in school newsletters? Like, is there an opportunity? Again, I'm a big one for push information because I just don't think that people always know where to look or where to find it. And so I think, sending it out to them so that they have access to it when they kind of need it, or just that it flags in their mind. But is that something? Is it feasible for us to put it out somehow if the schools could send it out through newsletters, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, trustee. So I'm showing you, but there is a website it's linked to our landing page, and so schools would have that information, and just making it aware to parents more intentionally is we've done it before. So yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just that would be great. And I was also really pleased to see that there is dedicated resources specifically for students who have special education needs, or because we do know that there is a subset of that population that struggles in different ways for all the reasons that you listed. So again, I guess just curious, is that being fleshed out a little bit more about how you're running with that, how that's being implemented, how that's being utilized? Is there a plan for that information as well to be shared somehow or acted on?
I can speak to it. So because it falls under my portfolio, we all kind of work together. And so that's part of our shared commitment that we're all making sure that regardless of our discipline, that staff feel that they have the resources to support all students so that they have access to, whether it's the reflection tools, like we want to make them alive and living in the schools. We don't want them to just be resources that are on a landing page, for example. So most of the conversations or most of the capacity building, we do speak to that cohort. Obviously, it's important to us. And if there's any gap or anything that is also required, then we have a team that will come and support, whether it's just bouncing off ideas or helping to deliver some of that programming. We have a partnership, not only amongst our department, but through curriculum as well.
And curriculum was part of the rollout of the training for the modules. So there was a training day where the educators delivering the modules had the opportunity to look at the modules as well as the educator guides. And that's available to any teacher that is teaching the 7, 8, or 10 lessons, as well as available online on our portal so that any staff can actually access them as well.
Perfect, thank you.
I have one, yeah. In case that the special needs affects the cognitive ability of the student, is this material in some form adapted? For example, you were saying that they learn strategies to deal with bullying or with certain circumstances. So is there any visuals or any adaptation for kids that maybe would struggle a little bit to understand the concepts?
Yes, that is part of it. So each of the lessons has an initial like introduction, an activity, and then a consolidation. And School Mental Health Ontario has released different graphics. So teachers have the ability to substitute the activity with other ones that are more suitable to a range of student needs.
That was on my list as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you, and please always let us know if there's any role that we can play as SEAC members, if there's a way for us to communicate this information out to our individual associations, or to just, communicate, because like, this is great. Like especially again, I don't want to harp on it, but seeing that piece for parents and caregivers is so important, how they can play a role in this, and often they feel, I think, a little bit lost. I'm speaking from personal experience sometimes. And then the part about students with special education needs, like that's been something that has been brought up at this table over the years about having dedicated resources specific for mental health needs for those students. So if there's anything we can ever do to help, please let us know. We'd be happy to help out. Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Okay, moving along to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes. So again, you will have received a package of the minutes from the November 25th meeting in your meeting package for this evening. Was there any questions or comments at all about the minutes? No, all good. Okay, great. Could I get someone to move to approve the minutes of the November 25th meeting? Trish, thank you. Is moved by Trish, seconded. Rick, perfect. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, business arising from previous meetings. The chart will have been in your package. Was there any questions at all around that? We have to fill that up. Well, that'll be our next conversation down here as we move to subcommittees. Okay, great. We don't have any policies for review this evening, correct? Okay, item number 7, we have no action and information items. So moving on to item number 8, board committee updates from SEAC representatives. So at our last meeting, I think it was 2 meetings ago, we had a conversation about looking at subcommittees and, recognizing that there's sometimes initiatives here that, they come up, we discuss them, they sort of sit there, and not for, any ill intent. We struggle with a way to sort of bring those forward. And so I know that there are other large committees here at the board who also have subcommittees that work on some of these initiatives. And so we thought about having a bit of a conversation around that, sort of seeing what your thoughts are, if it was something that we wanted to do moving forward. We have had subcommittees at SEAC. We had them for the Code of Conduct. We have obviously the one that does the Spirit of Inclusion Awards. In the past, we've had parent engagement and communication subcommittees. So I wanted to bring it forward to get people's thoughts. I have a couple of ideas on some subcommittees that we could maybe start with. But I wanted to open it up first to see if anybody had any ideas about something they'd like to see moved forward from a subcommittee that we could potentially look to put together or move on. And if not, that's okay. I'm happy to start the discussion.
This isn't a new one. This is taking us back to the Code of Conduct Subcommittee. I think it's also called the SEAC guidelines document. It's kind of hit a kind of stopped for it or stalled for a little while. So I can bring to the next January meeting to consolidate some of the documents and some of the last meeting attendance has been a bit tough to get everyone together. So I'll put together a document for the next meeting, or maybe even circulate to subcommittee members, even other the whole committee if they want to just look at what we put together and either finish it up or bring it forward to maybe one more meeting with the subcommittee, so we can get the document kind of finalized and put together before we get too far into this year and realize we need to push it off to next year again, right? So so I'll do that if that's okay. I'll put that forward for the next month, and I'll get it something by mid-January just to everyone to look at. That
sounds perfect. Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate that. And that's been, again, an example of some of the good work we've done at one of our subcommittees. So I'll toss it out there for consideration. The 2 ideas that I had, and they come out of, I think, some of the discussions that we have here, some of the things I hear from association members. So the 2 things I thought of was, one was having a parent engagement subcommittee. And that could that could look like, I don't know, depends what the subcommittee came up with, but that could come up with a variety of different ways that we would look to engage with parents and guardians. And the reason that I say that is I think parents and guardians are always looking for information. They're looking for ways to connect. They're looking for ways to help navigate the system. I must get at least a few calls a week. So the thought was, is there something that we could be doing here as a subcommittee to put some initiatives forward to help better engage with some of our communities? And again, what that looks like, I don't know, but I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe having that kind of subcommittee. The second one was a communications subcommittee. And by that, we do have a Twitter account. We can, Twitter X, whatever it's called, for whatever that looks like. And maybe that's not where that lasts. Maybe we need to take a look at doing an Instagram page. Is that what we need to be looking to? Do we move this to Blue Sky? I don't know. We could certainly engage, our communication specialists here at the board, but we have a lot to say. And we have a lot of great things going on. And I think it would be wonderful if we found a way to communicate those and get communication back. But then, things like our SEAC sound bites could go under the communication subcommittee, or anything that we wanted to send out. Maybe it was a note to the system on something, or maybe it was working with, some different organizations to send information out. So those were the two that I thought about, and I wanted to get some feedback on those two ideas and see if there's a general interest in being on either one of those or both or none. And if we thought maybe we just start with those and see where we get. So I open up the floor for comments. Somebody.
I like the parent engagement idea. I do think that. I think there's a lot of people coming into our system who, even when you've been in it a couple of years and you're still trying to navigate, there's always something to navigate. I don't know what it looks like, but that kind of overlaps with both parent engagement and communication, right? So
they could have shared.
Want to be efficient. Good idea. I support that.
I was actually going to say that I think the two kind of go hand in hand, because a lot of it, like communication, needs to come out from SEAC. I really like the idea of an Instagram account. I feel like that would reach a lot more people, but I know I think those are both really great ideas, and I'd definitely be interested in kind of being on both of them. So.
I mean, and that's a really great point. I'm sort of like my marketing hat. I divvy those up, but that doesn't mean that has to be that way. We could decide that part of our parent engagement was the communication piece, and maybe it's not parent engagement. Maybe we're just calling it, community engagement, and then that could be with staff, that could be with community members, that could be with parents, that could be with students. I mean, however we work that out, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just an engagement committee, SEAC engagement committee, and we could put a communication under that, or whatever the committee decides, and then it could be just dipping our toe back in the water of subcommittees. So I'd be happy to put that forward and see if who's interested, and then we can put together some meeting times, and then we can start to talk through what that might look like. It'd be great even if if the committee could come up with 2 initiatives this year. Maybe there's 2 things that we could, work towards doing. Yeah, I think it'd be awesome, actually. Okay, perfect. All right, so what we can do then is we can send out an email to see who would like to be on that subcommittee. We can decide if it's 1 or 2, how we want to do that, and then we can bring in communications as well. Yep.
Just to see if I understood correctly, like we're saying that we would have one communication engaging subcommittee, or like I don't understand what the difference would be between if we have the parent engaging and then the communications. What would be the difference?
Yeah, so I can help to. Yeah. So I think if you took a look at. So I always think sort of about communications as like being like kind of a one-way push out. I mean, sometimes there's back and forth. When you do communications, you're sending out information. So it could be, again, a SEAC soundbite. It could be some messages on Instagram that we want to put out there. And there's a little bit of engagement that comes back, but it's really us pushing that out. It's communication. So it's kind of one direction. Engagement is really working to do that. So to engage, so it's sort of two-way. It would be, encouraging families to get more involved, to learn more about what's going on, to actively be involved in navigating the system. It could be a webinar where there's an opportunity for two-way communication. So there's no reason we can't figure out a way to put them together and call it something else and have different initiatives. But that was the thought on having two, is, one, they're just different approaches to getting information out there. And then depending on what you want to get back. Yeah, you're welcome. And was there any other, do we want to just start with that? Was there any other ideas we had? I know that we're also going to be having the spec ed plan review will be a subcommittee. Again, the Spirit of Inclusion Awards will be a subcommittee. So we got a couple other things. We had talked about having a accessible, an inclusive recreation committee before as well. So I don't know if there's still an appetite for that. There's been some initial discussions sort of with curriculum of what that might look like, but it's also something that we could consider if there's an appetite for it. So I don't know exactly. I think it could be, one of the things we talked about here over a number of years has been how do we find more ways to engage students with disabilities or with special education needs in recreation. So it could be in intramurals. It could be in, system-wide. It could be the track and field. It could be cross country. It could be, finding ways to look for inclusive recreation opportunities for students across our system. So we talked a lot, we do have students as an example who are para athletes. There's no way for them to participate at a system level. We don't have wheelchair basketball. We don't have sledge hockey. We don't have para track and field. We don't have those things. So it was a discussion. And I know that if there was individuals in the curriculum department that were like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's flesh that out. Let's see what that looks like. Even if you look at our is it our track meet day? So our track meet day though is, we don't have that across, we don't have that. So we don't have it for high school students, right? We only have it for life skill students. So we don't have, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have an inclusive opportunity for any of our high school students to participate in that type of, right? There's life skills students can participate, but if it's a student who has a walker or a wheelchair or another disability, there's no adapted way for them to participate. So there's been sort of conversations. It's not a mountain I can climb by myself. It's discussions we've had here. So would it be something that SEAC would want to get behind? And there's no right or wrong answer. But I do know that when it came up with board staff, there was definitely interest in what would that look like? And sometimes it's giving ideas to the individual schools, right? How do you adapt sports so that people can participate in them? How do you engage with outside places like cruisers or other associations? So that's what that looked like from an accessible recreation perspective. And I can add that, I can put that out when we send the email out. And if there's anybody that's interested in doing that, we can put that out as a suggestion of a subcommittee. See what that looks like. I think that we have a lot of know-how and knowledge here, and a lot of experience here, and a lot of access to outside resources through our organizations and communities. I think that could be super valuable in helping to maybe move the needle forward in a few different ways.
Sorry, Madam Chair, may I just ask, that's something actually, if we don't want to do another subcommittee, that is something we could not add to the parent / engagement and communication, but maybe that's an initiative thing that, or a communication piece on how do you engage recreationally in a traditional
for sure
setting.
Yep, absolutely.
That's I like that.
So yeah, we could just start with that and see where it goes from there. But that's what that originally, Rick, you and I had talked about that, I think too, right? That was something that sort of sat there for a little bit. Okay. So it would just be wanting to see if there was an interest in doing that. And we're not talking about a meeting a month. We're talking about a couple meetings in a year just to try to see what that might look like. So I can put that out for sure. And if there's any, I know we're missing a couple of members here tonight. So if anybody's interested, we can move that forward. Perfect. So Margaret will just make a note to send that out. I'm happy to help with copy for that. Okay, so moving along, thank you, everybody. Moving along to item number 9, communication is SEAC. We will start with the trustee report. So Trustee Powell, over to you.
A couple of points from our last board meeting. It was December 3rd. We had the 12th annual Keeping Christ in Christmas contest. So we had a number of the finalists. We had 355 submissions this year. Sorry, 335 submissions. And 12 finalists presented at the board. All 12, I didn't actually count, pretty close to almost everybody that narrowed, sorry, what, the finalists, yeah. The finalists in each category presented their poem or song or skit. Oh my goodness, there's such talented kids here. Holy cow. It was so sweet. Really nice night. And then, yeah, that was the start of our board meeting last. Wish every board could have something so nice. And then just at that meeting as well, we had our superintendent, finance superintendent Loft and his team present the 23-24 draft consolidated financial statements for approval. Lots of conversations, robust discussion happened. It did pass. In accordance with the Education Act, these audited statements will be available on our website. Feel the need to peruse. Some of it's interesting. And yeah, that's it. One meeting, so a bit early.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions at all on the trustee report? Nope. Does everybody need another Buntini? That's so cool. Okay, no? All right. Over to you, Superintendent Jack Caldera.
For you, Chair. Okay, hello, everyone. So I do have a little report. I'll start off with, we do have 2 administrators in that are retiring. Michelle Morrissey, who's principal at OLV, who oversees our gifted and our ESC classes, as well as Claire Lanois, who's at St. Clair, who's an administrator I've come to know through our work and collaboration through our CLCs. They're both retiring at the end of this month, so I wanted to acknowledge and appreciate their hard work and dedication, lifelong career, but particularly selfishly around their support of our special education programming that they supported, and we wish them both very well. And then on December 12th, the special education staff participated in a half-day session facilitated by CAS on the duty to report. We've been reimagining and strengthening that relationship as we obviously support the region. And one of the things that I believe resonated with me is looking at CAS as an opportunity to support families and not necessarily as a tool to, to cause harm, but to offer supports and resources to families. And I think that rebranding has landed really well, not only in our commitment to our students, but with our goals with our community partners and in our multi-year strategic plans. So really excited that we were able to pull everyone to do that training in person. I'm going to jump over to some recognition. So last month we received a certificate of recognition for our Stop Now and Plan program, which is SNAP. And I've added to the notes that you would have received so that you know a little bit more about what SNAP is. It's an evidence-based cognitive behavioral model that provides a framework for teaching students struggling with behavior issues. It offers supports to their parents, helps with effective emotional regulation, self-control, and problem-solving skills. So we received and were recognized for the Excellence in School Implementation Award. And I'm quoting Aaron Oates, who is the senior trainer and community facilitator. He said, "We here thought no other school affiliate has seamlessly integrated the program into the students' daily lives as much as you and your team has. You also have achieved your targeted goals and had such positive outcomes across the board." So we got a certificate, we made a big deal, we had photo op, and so it's nice to know that the work that we're doing is being recognized in other circles, and I certainly appreciate the CYCs and their leadership in that regard as well. So, last month, we also had the Our Kids Network Roundtable, which comprises of the Halton 7. Halton 7 are Halton CAS, Arano Kids, Halton Region, HCDSB, HDSB, the Halton Multicultural Council Connection, so HMC Connections, and ROC, our Reach Out Center for Kids. We come together. It's very unique to the region that these partners come together, and we share our understanding of some data. So there's some data around the early development, kindergarten parent survey, student mental health surveys. We look at all that data from our respective, like who we represent. So I rep the HCDSB, and we actually got to sit at tables with the other 6 member representatives at the tables that we were each at. So our senior manager of CYC, or senior manager of our social work. We had some curriculum partners as well. We all sat at different tables, but we all got to meet and connect with the other members of the Halton 7. And the focus is really to not only inform, but to have a part of conversations that are supporting the students, the families in the region. So it's a really cool initiative. It wasn't something that I experienced in my previous life before I joined Halton Catholic District School Board. So it was a good opportunity. And so we will build on that research and build on those conversations. And they've come and shared some information, some of the data poll that I think is helpful, but I'd love for the kind of organizing duo to come in and speak with SEAC, actually, because some of the data that they share, I think, would resonate with all of us here. We don't have any ministry updates, but we do have a policy that is around student mental health and well-being that's being reviewed in May of 2025. So we're giving you lots of time to look at that policy, but I wanted to mention it because we did have that fresh off the heels of the presentation today. So it might be something kind of fresh in the minds, but we will certainly remind you of that as we approach that deadline for your feedback. And I think I mentioned last month that we are able to provide some feedback for Maxi. So if you haven't had a chance to do so, that's it's a ministry advisory. I think, Brenda, you sat on it as well. We get to provide feedback on what's going well in our board as far as special education is concerned, and what are some areas that we would like to see improved, and what feedback we have. So some suggestions. We never have a shortage of feedback, but if you have ideas and things to share, please let us know. This month, there was some summer school 2025 interest survey sent out to students, parents and guardians of students in grade 8 entering grade 9. So that's something that you want to dig out through your inboxes. And there was also some information about snow days, particularly around transportation, because I know that that's an important update to receive. At the time, it looked like we were in for some quite snowy weather, but it's staying relatively mild and raining right now, so no complaints, but just so that you're aware, those pieces of communication did go out. We did recognize on December the 11th, EA Appreciation Day, and so just so grateful and thankful for the work that our educational assistants do. And on December 10th, our EA managers hosted an IEA team meeting with concentration on our collaborative process with our BAs and our SLPs. We also onboarded new EA staff and reviewed our safe management needs as a system. So really happy about the work that's being done there. From our senior manager of speech and language, all the titles, in collaboration with Superintendent of Special Education and Chief Research Officer, Senior Managers of BAs and Senior Manager of Psychology are participating and providing feedback to the ministry on modernizing the PPM 140 survey. That's the PPM that talks about our ABA, how we use ABA in our schools. And so there's a survey that goes out every so often, and we were able to provide some feedback on what questions we thought would be useful and how we could see that informing changes for implementation. Also, SLPs and CDAs participate in training on a program called Talk Moves to support students in engaging in academic conversations in the classroom. And all of our senior managers with their assistant chaplain co-facilitated a day of professional development for staff who are part of our CCCRT, and that took place on November 29th. And that's our Catholic crisis response. I forget what the... Thank you. Psychology updates. Our psychology staff is continuing to support the mental health and well-being multidisciplinary team for Tier 3 mental health needs. We are also reviewing of external psychological reports has been streamlined through our eLight system in order to make that process faster and more efficient. And 50 assessments are being outsourced to address the waitlist, particularly in the areas of the northern part of our board. A portion of CYC staff attended School Mental Health Ontario's virtual student-led launch event on resources by and for newcomer students. One of the presenters included a student from our board. CYCs will be reviewing the student-created resources collectively at the December department meeting and will discuss ways to support student mental health and well-being of newcomer students. We don't have any social work updates, but you did receive a lovely presentation. In addition, the mental health team held the first of 3 meetings of the Mental Health and Wellbeing Champions on December 5th. 2 champions came from secondary school and attended a full day of activities related to team building and planning for expanding the Champions program for elementary schools. And then finally, our new CERT CLC took place on December 3rd. CERTs new to the role learned about HCDSB's independence rubric process and reviewed videos, literature, and strategies on how to fade support. They also received a presentation from social work, CYC, and an educator on a trauma-informed approach. We did have a family of schools held on December 11th. CERTs received presentations on identifying and understanding strengths and needs from assessments, kindergarten, early years, and the Thrive program. And the coordinator and SEAC consultant attended a cross-board meeting with the ministry about best practices for SEA, a new ministry mandates and funding model. And I think at this time, that wraps up my report. I don't know if there's any questions, but wanted to extend a very Merry Christmas to everyone, and can't believe we're heading into 2025 when we were just partying like it was 1999. Yeah, so I don't know if there's any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Is there any questions at all on the superintendent report? I had a question. It's more like probably a broader question, but around the trauma-informed piece, are you seeing more of that emerging as far as being, the training for being trauma-informed? What is that looking like? Is it something that we're starting to, do more and more here? Just when you said it, I'm hearing a lot of that in a lot of industry right now, and I just wondered how it was working here.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So I do feel like we're at a critical time where we're no longer kind of assuming or trying to figure out or wondering about the impact of trauma and its intersections. So trauma and your identity, trauma and your ability, like there's a number of things, economic status. So we have been really fortunate to be able to build on data, resources, research to help deliver programs that are sensitive to the experiences of our students in probably ways we weren't thinking about 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm hoping that we will, some of these terms that we use, I'm hoping that it'll just be general practice. Like I'm hoping that we will take away some of those titles and then it'll just be what it is, like how we do. But yeah, so it's very intentional. And I think as we look to planning for 25, 26, crazy to say that, we're really prioritizing how do we do this work in with the resources that we have in a way that's going to best meet the needs. And I love the partnership that we have with the newcomer centers. Like there's so many partnerships that are kind of emerging that allow us to have a further reach. And so yeah.
We hear a lot from parent. I'm just talking from a parent's perspective for 1 second, but it's parents go into meetings, they go into team meetings, they go into transitional situations, they go in, and a lot of trauma comes with that. They have a student, or they have a child who has an identification. We don't know the route to which they got to that. That feeling about sitting around the table with a bunch of different people. And, I often say, you don't know what sort of transpired that morning or the night before, the phone call that parent got before they got into a school meeting. And we just don't know what comes along with it, especially for this vulnerable population. And I think, starting the school anyways, I think, you've had your child at home for 6 years. There's been a lot of things you've come through to get them there. And now you're bringing them into the care of, someone else. And I hear a lot from parents who just don't, they freeze up sort of in those meetings, or they're not sure how to navigate things forward because there's just so much trauma that they've come with. And that's just from that lens. And then I can't even imagine from a staff perspective or from a student perspective, right? We all have something that comes with us. So I'm glad to hear that it's some work that we're intentional about doing. Especially for this population. So curious to hear a bit more as you go through that. We'd love to hear more about that.
And I think also just from the surrounding areas, we know that that's kind of the trend. And as we move these imaginary boundaries, whether it's in and out of Halton, we want to support those the individuals regardless of how long they stay with us for, or yeah. So
thank you so much. Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Yes, so I do have a question regarding the SLP piece. In terms of the support piece, I'm wondering how the support has been rendered. Is it like in form of strategies given to the schools, or do the SLPs work directly with the students? How does that work? Then in terms of the students that are involved in this piece, is it all students, or is there like a particular grade limit for it? Just something around that.
You're very lucky because our senior manager of SLP is in the building. It's a loaded question because there's many layers to the types of supports. I won't answer for Denise, but there's definitely definitely many layers of supports that we are able to provide students, and for families to support students with their oral expression. But I will turn it over to Denise. I'm going to put you on the spot if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. So the speech language pathologists and communicative disorders assistants work within a tiered model of intervention. So at tier 1, which would be good for all, they're in classrooms supporting some class-wide programming, especially in kindergarten and grade 1, to support oral language development. So they're working with the teachers to embed programming that's good for all students. We recognize that some students need more than that, so they can be referred through, a school team process for tier 2 speech and language support, which starts off with an assessment of either their receptive and expressive language skills, or their ability to use alternative and augmentative communication, or it might be an assessment of their speech, their articulation, or their fluency. And then after that assessment, they're put on a pathway depending on the level of need that they have. And the number of visits differ depending on what pathway they're on, whether they have some mild needs in one modality or more significant needs across a number of areas. And the role of the SLPs is really to identify what are the strategies that are going to support that child in an educational setting. And once they've identified what strategies work, based on the goals that the classroom teacher has identified, then they work with the school team around implementing those strategies on a daily basis to support access to curriculum, social interaction, and just overall growth and well-being.
Perfect. Any other questions? Good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you to you both for your reports. Moving on to item number 10, SEAC discussion item or questions. Is there anything anyone wanted to bring up with respect to SEAC discussion items or questions this evening? All good? Okay. Meeting summary and next steps. So Margaret, you got it. She's already like, yep. Do you think that as well, you might be able to add to your list about a reminder for members to give feedback for the Maxi piece? Would that be okay? Just to sort of summarize what that is we'd be looking for if people wanted to participate and when they would have to have that to you by. That would be great, in addition to sending out the information on the subcommittees. And I think that is it. Our next agenda meeting is, our next meeting is January the 27th. So we will be into 2025 by then. Resolution for absentees. I do need a resolution to excuse Brianna, Abiola, and Maria this evening. If I could get someone to move that, be it resolved. Trish, moved by Trish. Seconded, Amanda. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our adjournment and prayer. If I could get a motion to adjourn. Amanda, thank you. And Rick seconds. Thank you so much. If you will join me in the sign of our faith for our closing prayer, you know, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a wonderful new year, and we will see you all in 2025. Thank you so much, and please grab another treat on your way out.